بدنا نشوف حل جذري لوين واصلين. حرب ما بعرف إذا بلشت ولا لا، بس ما في شيء بيطمن. الواضح إنه ما رح يوقفوا الجانبين.
Chaos in Lebanon tonight after an Israeli airstrike came down in a residential suburb of Beirut, stoking panic and chaos across that region. I'm Gadi Schwartz, and this is Stay Tuned Now. And tonight in the Middle East, Israel has taken its battle from its northern border with Lebanon straight to the country's capital, launching an airstrike in the Beirut suburbs, targeting Hezbollah leaders. And that strike brought down 2 high-rise apartment buildings in a densely populated area. Now, Lebanese officials say at least 14 people were killed and dozens of others were hurt in the attack, including a man wanted by the U.S. for his role in a series of deadly bombings back in the 80s, and 10 other Hezbollah commanders, according to the Israeli military. Both Israel and Hezbollah continued to exchange rocket fire over the border as well. And after today's strikes, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu issued a rather vague statement saying, quote, "Our goals are clear and our actions speak for themselves." And judging by what the world has seen this week, with the killing of nearly 40 people by exploding pagers and walkie-talkies and hundreds of rocket attacks across the border, that goal could be an all-out war between Israel and Hezbollah. And NBC News chief international correspondent Keir Simmons joins us now. Keir, what are Israel's goals when it comes to Hezbollah?
Well, it's quite simple, really, Gadi. I mean, simple in principle, and that is that they want to be able to have the tens of thousands of Israeli citizens along the southern border of Lebanon, the northern border of Israel, go back to their homes. There are Lebanese on the other side of the border who can't go to their homes too, but what the Israelis say is that Hezbollah is deliberately targeting that area of Israel as part of their campaign to put pressure on Israel over Gaza. Now, we heard the leader of Hezbollah just this week saying, well, we're not going to do that. We're not going to allow that, not until something changes in Gaza. And at the same time, we're hearing the Israelis say, we are going to keep going until we manage to achieve that goal. Now, what we've seen this week is a ratcheting up of the pressure. We've seen those air and artillery strikes by the Israelis into Lebanon on the border. We've seen the pager and the walkie-talkie explosions and this bombing here in Beirut. We heard it. We heard the aircraft today happen today. But none of that can actually move things on the ground, change things on the ground. That's why some in the international community are so worried that ultimately this is going to result with a full-scale war on the ground as Israelis push into this country, Lebanon, in order to achieve that aim.
And Keir, a lot of people are wondering right now, why escalate now? Was this always the plan, or did something happen to expedite this timeline?
Yeah, it's a great question. So there are possible answers, and let's just say we don't know the answer because we're not in the room with the Israelis, and it is the Israelis really who are kind of leading on this in a certain sense, if you like. We're not in the room with them. But there are possibilities. One is that they are trying to weaken Hezbollah ahead of a push, a military push. Another is, as I said, that they are trying to punish Hezbollah until it concedes the goals that Israel wants. And another is that they're using the opportunity to weaken Hezbollah. It is backed by Iran, and Israel sees, and it is very powerful militarily, not as powerful as Israel, but still very powerful, Hezbollah. So another possibility is that Israel is using the opportunity to degrade Hezbollah and therefore degrade Iran, and thereby make them less of a threat right on Israel's border. Now, we do know that Israel has a history of assassinations. Almost you could call it an assassination campaign over many, many decades. What we know about that from the reporting, from the historical accounts, is that what they do is if they have intelligence, they take action. So they're in the room making a decision, and they say, OK, we know that this person is there, and we're ready to do this. Let's do it. And that may well be the answer. They may just have had a number of options, and that they took this week.
And I don't want to read too much into this, but there are some headlines, some experts out there talking about the timing of this escalation as being politically influenced inside of Israel with Benjamin Netanyahu. Anything to that?
Yeah. Well, there are many people who would say that there is, Gadi, and Netanyahu is facing legal challenges and, of course, political challenges. So there are those who argue that it is politically, and this is pretty cynical stuff, obviously, politically advantageous for him for there to continue to be a conflict because it makes it difficult for him to be unseated and makes it difficult for him to be pursued when all of this is going on. Now, I mean, you know, ultimately, decisions get made for lots of different reasons, and Israel is a democracy, and decisions are being made with lots of different pressures, including very, very strong pressure, as you know, from the right in Israel, who in many ways hold a number of political cards. So, yeah, why is this happening now? What will happen next? I mean, these are the fundamental questions, Gadi, that people are trying to answer. But remember, just to wrap up, I mean, it's the Biden administration, the U.S. president, who wanted to see a de-escalation, and this week effectively had to admit he hasn't been able to achieve that.
And Keir, one more thing that is grabbing so many headlines. Further south, there's this disturbing video that came out of the West Bank today. Can you tell us about that and what's happening there?
Yeah, we did see it's been playing on media, on Arab media and on local media, a lot of images of Israeli Defense Forces pushing bodies off of a building in Gaza. The context of that we don't have fully. They do now say that there is an investigation, though there are many commentators here who are saying that it is a demonstration of the approach of the Israeli forces. As you know, on the other hand, the Israelis say, and they've said this many, many times, and many people dispute it, but what they say is that they have made real efforts to protect civilians, more effort than any other army would, and that they are trying to conduct this war in Gaza in a way that is appropriate, but also pursuing their war aims. That's what the different sides say, but certainly an image like that does get a lot of traction here and does, it does have an impact.
Keir Simmons for us tonight in Beirut. Keir, thanks for joining us. Joining us now is Aaron David Miller. He's the senior fellow at the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace. Now, thanks so much for joining us. Israel's goal in Gaza is, at this point, the eradication of Hamas, right? What's the goal with Hezbollah, do you think?
You know, it's not clear. You've got two wars of attrition going on. You've got one between Israel and Hamas and one between Israel and Hezbollah. And the reality is, from the strategic point of view, it's hard to imagine the Israelis solving their strategic problem with either one. With Hezbollah, they can clear Radwan forces from the south, secure a buffer zone, but they run into the problems of the 150 to 200,000 high-trajectory weapons of varying ranges of letalities and precision. If they trip into an escalation, you could end up with an Israeli home front that is literally being battered. Hundreds, if not more, casualties with serious damage to infrastructure. So for the moment, I think they've posed a cruel dilemma for Hezbollah. Either escalate or detach yourself from joining the axis of resistance on behalf of Hamas and de-escalate. And I think Hezbollah is going to have a very difficult time making that decision. They're not going to quit. The only question is, have they been so badly humiliated and so badly hemmed in that they'll try something desperate, which would be an escalation?
Do you, based on your expertise, do you see that happening, or do you see them possibly backing down here?
You know, 11 months of this war, I would have predicted earlier that we would have seen an escalation already. But the reality is, so far, risk aversion has prevailed, both on the part of Iran, on the part of Hezbollah, and until very recently, I suspect, even on the part of the Netanyahu government. But you have to keep something else in mind, which is, for Netanyahu, whose defining organizing principle is maintaining himself in power, the Hezbollah front is a lot easier. There are no hostages. There's no Palestinian Authority. There's no serious division with the United States. There's no return of Palestinian prisoners. And he's under some pressure to return the 60+ thousand Israelis who've been relocated, dislocated from the northern border. So I suspect they're going to remain focused on Lebanon, waiting to see exactly how Hezbollah responds.
At this point, is diplomacy like out the window here?
You know, out the window. I mean, I spent a better part of 30 years working for half a dozen secretaries of state on Arab-Israeli issues. And I can say I don't see any transformative fixes here, Gadi, but I think it's possible to imagine, because the U.S. has I think, a very sound diplomatic off-ramp for both Israel and Hezbollah. Question is whether Hassan Nasrallah, under the pressure that he's now under, is willing to take it. I wouldn't rule it out, but time's working against him because November 5 is right around the corner. And I think the administration can be very, very careful between now and then to do nothing that would essentially escalate the situation. And they'd end up on the eve of an American election with a major regional war.
Yeah, election in play, as well as the politics there in Israel. Aaron David Miller, thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
And some developing news tonight. South Carolina has executed a man that the key witness for the prosecution claims was innocent. Now, his last chance to live was denied when South Carolina's governor refused to grant clemency for the 46-year-old named Freddie Owens. Owens was sentenced to death over the 1997 murder of a gas station clerk, Irene Graves, during an armed robbery. She was shot in the head. But emergency motions filed by his lawyer claimed the co-defendant in the case admitted that he lied at trial as part of a secret deal. Despite this, South Carolina Supreme Court and the U.S. Supreme Court rejected requests to stop that execution. Freddie Owens was killed by lethal injection. It was South Carolina's first execution in 13 years. NBC News legal analyst Danny Savalos joins us now. Danny, there were a bunch of appeals filed for Owens throughout the years. Why did it take so long to uncover this new evidence that might have proven that he was innocent?
Well, that new evidence came from his co-defendant. So I guess the real question would be, why now did the co-defendant decide to execute an affidavit? And being a criminal defense attorney, it may surprise some folks to learn that these kinds of affidavits of witnesses recanting are actually not all that uncommon. Or I should say, the mere fact that there was an affidavit saying he didn't do it, I didn't give truthful testimony at trial, it's not the first time that kind of thing has happened. It happens fairly, I wouldn't say often, but it does happen, and courts don't look at those affidavits as automatic get-out-of-jail cards, and they don't automatically vacate a conviction or even stay an execution necessarily based on an affidavit like that, even though I have to concede this affidavit is very compelling, even though it was obtained very shortly before the execution.
And the state Supreme Court, they still ruled that the appeal wasn't compelling enough to stop the execution. They wrote in its order that Owens still took part in the armed robbery and showed, quote, reckless disregard for human life. If evidence suggesting that he didn't actually commit the murder wasn't enough to stop the execution, could anything have stopped it?
So I think in that passage, what the court was doing is making the distinction between evidence that he was the shooter or evidence that he was present at the scene but conducting the robbery. There's tons of case law on this issue, you know, whether someone who doesn't actually pull the trigger, are they to be treated exactly the same as the guy who's there? And generally speaking, accomplice liability answers that question, yes. But there were many different very complex appeals here. And the bottom line on that affidavit, which really was just obtained very recently, it's the kind of thing that isn't necessarily going to convince a court that an execution should be stayed. Although you can see that there are judges out there who might take a different tack. It's luck of the draw who you get. In related news, his petition to the Supreme Court, the U.S. Supreme Court, which is based on different grounds related to the means of execution. As I understand it, this just came down. One justice would have voted to hear more. The rest, apparently, the remainder did not.
Danny Savalos, thank you. And turning now to a story that was developing last night on our airways. They were seen getting ready to head to lunch. Two local officials, a judge and a sheriff in a very small Kentucky town. Then it wasn't long before the judge was dead, shot in the chest, and the sheriff was being charged with his murder. But the question that has everyone in the community asking tonight, why? NBC's Adrian Broadus has the latest.
Gadi, people in this community are still trying to make sense of what happened. Surprised to see the Letcher County Courthouse, which is behind me, become a crime scene. And the suspect, the sheriff here, now charged with first-degree murder in the killing of longtime judge Kevin Mullins. All day Friday, the courthouse was closed. What's next? Well, we know as of right now, the sheriff has not retained an attorney. What led up to this shooting is still unclear. Kentucky State Police did say there was an argument in the judge's chambers on Thursday. I spoke with an attorney who is friends with the judge and the sheriff. Here's what he told us about both of them.
He was a brilliant jurist, and in a word, patient. The sheriff, in my experience, he was always, markedly mellow and cool-headed.
And before becoming sheriff, Stein served as bailiff for the judge. Meanwhile, a special prosecutor will handle this criminal case. The Commonwealth's attorney for Letcher County has recused himself from the case, citing family ties to Judge Mullins. Gadi?
Adrian Broadus. Adrian, thank you. Let's bring in Lucas Albuck. He's a reporter at the Courier-Journal, a newspaper based in Louisville. Lucas, thanks so much for being with us. What, if anything, do we know right now about the relationship between the judge and the sheriff?
Well, thanks for having me on. I've been out here in Whitesburg today talking to people. The judge and sheriff, as she just said, the sheriff had been the bailiff in his court for several years, I believe. He was elected sheriff in 2018. They were friends, people here in town say. You know, it's a town of 2,000 or so people where kind of everybody knows everybody type of thing. So, everybody I've talked to said they were friends. They were very well known around town. And yeah, there's just a lot of questions about what happened in the hours and possibly days leading up to the shooting. There's a lot that hasn't been determined.
Yeah, so he was a bailiff for a while. And we also know that Sheriff Stein was named in a 2022 lawsuit. Do you know anything about that? Could there be a connection to any of the lawsuit?
Yes. So I've spoken to some attorneys who were involved in that case and still are involved. The federal case is still moving through the court system. Steins was not charged with any sexual offenses himself. In that case, he was more charged in his capacity as sheriff, as in he should have known that he had a deputy who was taking part. The deputy was accused and later convicted in state court of exchanging sexual favors with an inmate in turn for favorable treatment. So he was jailed. The sheriff Steins, he was not charged with any criminal case, but he was accused in the civil lawsuit of basically failing to train and failing to monitor his deputy. And he was deposed in this case on Monday. I was told it lasted 4 to 5 hours. He denied having any knowledge of it until the civil case was filed. But the attorneys I spoke to did say they were not ready or comfortable drawing a straight line between that and the shooting that took place. They don't know the motive, and they were not ready to say that the lawsuit and the deposition that just took place earlier this week was necessarily related to it. So still a lot of questions about what the motive is, but yeah, that was that case has been moving through the court system for about 2.5 years now. So again, it's just one of many unanswered questions. Yeah.
It could be anything, but 45-hour deposition. That is quite the deposition. Can you tell us a little bit?
425, sorry.
425 hours. Oh, got it. Okay, I was going to say.
A little different, yeah.
Yeah, and you've been spending a little bit of time in that community. How has this shooting affected those that live there?
Yeah, Whitesburg is a tight-knit town. This is as part of the state. It's a little secluded. Right here in the Appalachian Hills, it's, like I said, a town where everybody knows everybody, 1,700 people here. And it's kind of an artsy town. There's several artists here. There's a popular Apple shop, art not museum, but collective type of thing. And yeah, I mean, you talk to people out here, shocked is the word that everybody uses. Everybody, these guys were known by everyone. I talked to several people who had been convicted of drug crimes who were in Judge Mullins' court, and they said they respected him because they pushed them into treatment as opposed to putting them in prison. And, I talked to a lot of people. Everybody knew the Sheriff Steins. Everybody knows the Sheriff Steins. And I couldn't find one person who would say a bad word against him other than what took place yesterday, the shock and just the questions that they all had. So, there are a lot of rumors out there. There are a lot of questions about what happened. Everybody's got a story. And, but yeah, it's a lot of questions, not a lot of answers right now. I believe Steins is supposed to be in court next week. So we're hoping to get some of those answers from officials at that time.
Lucas Albach from the Courier-Journal. We really appreciate you getting the facts out there for us. Thanks so much.
Much appreciate it. Thank you for having me on. Yeah.
Sure. And some scathing findings today from the Secret Service that's responsible for a list of failures leading up to the first assassination attempt against Donald Trump back in July. Bad planning, poor communication with law enforcement. Those are just to name a few, and it's all part of a new report released today.
Issues were encountered the day of the visit with respect to line-of-sight concerns, but they were not escalated to supervisors. While some members of the advance team were very diligent, there was complacency on the part of others that led to a breach of security protocols.
Important mea culpa there. The Secret Service has been under a microscope lately, especially with the second apparent attempt on Trump's life last week. Meanwhile, the House just voted to boost Secret Service protection for both presidential nominees and their running mates. NBC News senior White House correspondent Kelly O'Donnell has more. Kelly?
Good evening. No question, Secret Service has been under scrutiny and under pressure to deliver on protection for the top candidates and national leaders and their families all over the country. A new report is out from the Secret Service. It's a portion of their internal review that looks at what happened in Butler, Pennsylvania. And they acknowledge it was a security failure. And they focus on some key things: communications breakdowns with local authorities, a failure to identify to local authorities who were assigned coverage of that rooftop to secure it, which was outside the security perimeter, that they never went back and made sure that was done. Complacency is one of the words that the acting director used. And he said this investigation is moving into the next phase, accountability. And he expects there will be disciplinary actions coming. Here's what he had to say.
We're at a pivotal moment in the history of the Secret Service and at a pivotal moment in the history of our country. And I've directed that the Secret Service embark on a significant paradigm shift that will redefine how we conduct protective operations.
Among the biggest changes after that July event in Butler, Pennsylvania, President Biden authorized the highest level of Secret Service protection for former President Trump and Vice President Harris. So they are each getting presidential level protection from the Secret Service. When there was a man arrested after visiting the Trump golf course on Sunday with a gun, officials say the methods they used for that golf game and protecting the president worked. But they also say there is a need for more resources, more technology, more manpower, because the threat level is so great. And the tempo of events with the campaign in full gear is so heavy and so intense for officers, agents, all of the parties who are trying to protect these top officials, that there is wear and tear and exhaustion. They're being stretched to the limit. So the Secret Service expects to ask for more resources and to put changes into play to make sure that they can protect these national leaders and learn from these mistakes. Gadi?
Kelly O'Donnell, thank you. And don't go anywhere. We are just getting started. Up next, the growing candidate controversy in North Carolina, reaction to the GOP's nominee for governor staying on the ballot, and the role this all could play in the race for the White House. Plus, making history. Actually, no. Making her story on the football field. Tonight, two NFL teams led by two women will go head-to-head this weekend. What it says about the league's diversity and inclusion efforts. And later this hour, a major update on our NBC News deep dive on crushing medical debt. What one company has agreed to do for thousands and the impact it's already having.
I'm sure that my wife in heaven is looking down. I'm sure she's pleased because she knows that she did not leave a defeated, broken man here on earth to carry on.
Hey, welcome back. And here are some of the other headlines we're watching tonight. U.S. soldier Travis King, who was detained by North Korea after leaving a tour group in South Korea and crossing the border, has pleaded guilty to 5 charges, including desertion and assaulting an officer. King says he wasn't happy with work and wanted to leave the Army and never come back. He also says even though he has been diagnosed with mental health conditions, he is competent to stand trial. And a U.S. Coast Guard panel listened to a 4th day of testimony over the cause of last year's Titan submersible implosion. Now, the panel heard from a mission specialist who participated in the 2021 mission to the Titanic. He says that mission was aborted due to a mechanical failure and called the Titan, quote, dangerous. The hearing is expected to last another week. And coastal flood alerts are still in effect tonight along most of the East Coast. Strong winds could cause water levels to rise 1 to 2 feet, especially during high tide. While the Carolinas were hit pretty hard earlier this week, the rain is now headed to New England. And the FTC is suing 3 large U.S. health companies that negotiate insulin prices, saying they're inflating costs for patients while boosting profits. They're going after CVS, Cigna, and United Health, who the FTC say collectively administer about 80% of the country's prescriptions. All 3 companies disagree with the suit. And General Motors is recalling nearly 450,000 SUVs and pickup trucks. It's because of an issue with the brake fluid warning light. They say it might not come on when there's low brake fluid, which increases the risk of a crash. A free software update will be provided to all affected vehicle owners. And it is now so close to Election Day that early voting is now underway in 3 states, Virginia, Minnesota, and South Dakota. Other states also have started mailing out absentee ballots to eligible voters, including North Carolina. And that's where Republican candidate for governor Mark Robinson is staying on the ballot. Robinson refusing to pull out from the race after that bombshell CNN report we first told you about last night, allegedly linking him to some really problematic comments made on a porn website between 2008 and 2012. The report alleges Robinson called himself a black Nazi, a perv, even praised slavery. Some Republicans are already trying to distance themselves from Robinson, who has denied the report. NBC's Dasha Burns is in North Carolina and joins us now to break this all down. Dasha, how are Republicans and how are Democrats responding to this story?
Well, look, this is a really big problem for former President Trump, number one. This is a critical must win state for him and for his campaign, and they're really trying to navigate right now. NBC News, our reporting team, is hearing from sources that his allies and people within his own campaign have been urging him to pull his endorsement, which was a pretty full-throated one, by the way. He called him MLK on steroids at one point. He's really been supportive of Robinson, and Democrats are kind of having a field day with this. The Harris campaign is already out with an ad using those words from former President Trump against him, really trying to tie Trump and Robinson together as much as possible. The image that you're seeing on your screen right now, that is going to be used by the Harris campaign pretty much nonstop. They're putting up billboards, they're launching those ads. And so how to navigate this for the former president is going to be a challenge. He has not yet gotten on board with the idea of pulling his endorsement. I mean, he has endorsed some problematic candidates with scandals in the past. He's never pulled an endorsement. He worries that it might make him seem weak and upset the base, according to some of the sources that we've been talking to. So the question is, what does he do? Because he's coming here to North Carolina for a rally tomorrow. We know that Robinson is not going to be at the rally, so there is a little bit of distance being built here. So the question is whether he actually will pull that endorsement, get on board with his allies that are urging him to do that, or whether he'll do something like disavow Robinson but not go so far as pull that endorsement. But Gadi, either way, this down ballot candidate is a pretty big problem for up the ballot right now.
And North Carolina, it's so interesting. We see a lot of split tickets there. Is it possible for the Democrats to, I don't know, to use this and make some major headway in that state?
Well, look, you have seen North Carolina vote for a Democrat for governor and for Trump, for a Republican for president in past elections in 2016 and in 2020. That's what happened here. Trump carried the state, but by a narrower margin. And this time, the polls are showing it's a pretty close race here. So Harris has a shot if she might be able to tie them together enough to chip away a little bit or really boost turnout for Democrats. It's possible, but it's also entirely possible that people go to the polls, say, you know, I'm not going to vote for governor or vote for the Democrat for governor, but still vote for former President Trump regardless. This is a state that the Trump campaign really, really wants to hold on to. They want this one to be a slam dunk. They don't want to be worrying about North Carolina. And right now, it's a concern, Gadi.
Any scenario still possible. Dasha Burns, thank you. And a major new development in Georgia today, the state's election board voting to back a new plan which would require every paper ballot in the state to be counted by hand. Now, that decision comes as the U.S. Postal Service is facing questions over whether they'll be able to deliver ballots in time to be counted. NBC's Noah Pransky has more on that.
Last presidential election, the mail was bad. But, you know, it was during a pandemic, which makes it hard to believe, by some measures, it's even worse today on the eve of another nail-biter of an election.
Election 2024, make every mail ballot count. But you don't.
We'll come back to some very upset secretaries of state in a minute. First, though, we found not only is the Postal Service falling short of its own 93% target for delivering local mail within 2 days, but some of the slowest mail in the country right now is in swing states. As of this summer, just 86% of first-class mail in North Carolina was delivered on time. Wisconsin, just 71%. And Georgia, fewer than half of all local letters were delivered in 2 days. This matters because North Carolina, Wisconsin, and Georgia are among the 32 states that require mail ballots to be received by the time polls close on Election Day. So there's a chance legit ballots dropped into the mail the week before the election might never count.
At this point, the Pony Express is more effective than the U.S. Mail Service is.
Kansas Secretary of State Scott Schwab is demanding answers from Postmaster Louis DeJoy as to why the USPS failed to properly deliver 1,000 ballots in his state's recent primary, thus disqualifying the votes.
So they're taking our mail and shipping it out of state to have it hopefully show up at the clerk's office across the street. And that's the frustration.
Ever since the postmaster was appointed by then-President Trump in 2020, he's embarked upon an ambitious plan to make the Postal Service more efficient and, once again, profitable. But so far, it's done neither.
I mean, just do your job.
His concern is local elections. He knows Kansas won't determine the presidential race. But you know what state might?
I would say it's a disgrace.
Georgia Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger.
No more excuses. Get the job done.
He says ballot delays in Georgia are the last thing he needs in November.
Or any of us. Check out this back of the envelope math.
About 3% of legally cast mail ballots in Georgia's spring elections were disqualified for arriving late. Raffensperger says 300,000 Georgians could vote by mail this fall, meaning a 3% disqualification rate would erase 9,000 legally cast votes. In 2020, Joe Biden beat Donald Trump in Georgia by just 11,000 votes.
Get in gear. Elections are critical infrastructure.
The USPS tells us they'll initiate extraordinary measures when it comes to mail ballots this fall, essentially treating each one like express mail. And they have a 99% rate of delivering them within 7 days. But last month, the postmaster said voters should give them at least 7 days.
I am confident we will succeed in delivering election mail this season, just as we have done in the past.
He says the Postal Service requires reforms, so we all need to embrace a new normal where letters, paychecks, prescriptions, and even ballots take a little longer to get delivered. Noah Pransky, NBC.
Trying not to be infuriated. Noah, thank you so much. Coming up, the terrifying situation for firefighters in California. Details on a crash that sent 8 firefighters to the hospital. But first, you got to see this. You might have heard of that penguin movie, Happy Feet, but how about a happy, fluffy old belly? That is a 9-month-old penguin at the Melbourne Aquarium, and it's going viral for its extra cuddly appearance. Take a look at Pesto the penguin. He's a fluffy gray chunk, and believe it or not, he's still just a baby. He weighs in at a whopping 46 pounds, eats 25 fish a day to keep up that fluffy figure. And when he's going to grow up to be an adult, yes, he will eventually shed that baby weight. I don't know. I think he looks perfect just the way he is. We'll be right back. Hey, welcome back. And here are some of the stories happening out west that we're following right now. A fire truck coming off a 12-hour shift fighting the airport fire in California hit a guardrail and rolled over, sending 8 firefighters to the hospital. So far, 2 have been released, but the other 6 are still receiving treatment. Now, the cause of the crash is still under investigation. Meanwhile, a firefighter in the North Bay was arrested today on suspicion of starting 5 fires this summer while off duty. 38-year-old Robert Hernandez is an engineer for the Cal Fire System and still is now facing several arson charges. And for the first time in NFL history, a team says they're going to be using sustainable jet fuel when flying to their next game. The San Francisco 49ers partnered with United Airlines to use renewable energy to power their trip to Sunday's matchup against the LA Rams. And some big results after an NBC News exclusive investigation. A hospital company in North Carolina made this huge announcement. It is forgiving the debt for more than 11,000 former patients. NBC's Christine Romans has that story.
For Terry Belk in North Carolina, a new financial lease on life.
It feels great because you know that the way to build wealth for most Americans is through their home. So for almost 2 decades, I had that taken from me.
Belk has a lien on his home because of the $23,000 in medical debt he owes Atrium Health, despite having insurance. He began accruing the debt in 2003 when his wife Sandra was diagnosed with the breast cancer that would ultimately take her life. The hospital later sued again for Belk's own prostate cancer treatment, with interest, now a debt of $8,000. That all changed with a call he received early this week, days after his story was featured on Nightly News.
What did they say on the phone?
Well, he said that I had been through a lot and that they're moving forward in a new direction as it relates to, patient care and outcome, that they're going to be lifting liens and counseling judgments on all ex-patients.
For Terry and thousands of others, Atrium's parent, Advocate Health, now announcing it is canceling all judgment liens previously placed on homes and real estate as part of its efforts to collect unpaid medical bills, and that it will also forgive the outstanding debts associated with those liens.
We are sick and tired of waiting.
Rebecca Cerise is a healthcare advocate in North Carolina.
What a weight off their shoulders that this is no longer an issue. So we're thrilled. We're excited. By the way, we're hoping other hospital systems follow suit to what Atrium has done.
In all, Advocate Health says it is canceling more than 11,500 liens across 6 states, some, like Terry Belk's, dating back more than 20 years.
Look at that, lady.
Whoa. For our initial story on the $220 billion Americans owe in medical debt, Belk told us this.
I'm sure I'm going to take this debt into the afterlife.
Now he and thousands of others can breathe a sigh of relief.
And I'm sure that my wife in heaven is looking down, so she's pleased because she knows that she did not leave a defeated, broken man here on earth to carry on.
Christine, thank you. And history will be made this Sunday in the NFL when the Las Vegas Raiders host the Carolina Panthers, but not necessarily on the gridiron. That's because the only 2 female presidents in the NFL are going head-to-head. Panthers president Christy Coleman and Raider president Sandra Douglas Morgan will face off and continue to bust through that glass ceiling. Well, maybe not glass ceiling, like the bubble ceiling, the bubble dome, I guess it is. Steve Patterson joins us in the studio. So, Steve, let's back up here.
Sure.
Tell us how we got there.
So I want to tell you about these 2 women. Of course, they're dynamos, right? They're incredible women in their fields. Christy Coleman was like a CFO for a sports media group, and then she became a controller for the Panthers. So her route more traditional, but still like not any less impressive. But I know Sandra Douglas Morgan, not personally, but I interviewed her when she got the job in 2022. First Black Vegas city attorney, first Black chair of the Nevada game control board, now first Black and first Asian female NFL president. These women are incredible. They deserve the job. But I think the most important thing is that all the owners that hired them said it wasn't because you're Black or a woman or anything. It's just because you were the best people for the job. And now they have football teams and they're fighting each other. Which is great.
The CFO versus the lawyer. I mean, this is going to be one matchup. What do you think this means for the NFL?
I think it's a big deal because, you know, like a few years ago, the NFL wasn't doing too great. Everybody was kneeling and there was a whole bunch of controversy about certain teams and the names of teams and the way teams treated diversity. And so this is like a really big deal to have people that are in offices making actual decisions. It's not maybe akin to like a woman, you know, throwing the winning touchdown as a quarterback or something, but I think in a way this is even bigger because these are people, again, in front offices controlling either the decision-making, the money, who gets hired. These are powerful, powerful people in a male-dominated, traditionally sport, both not only on the field, but of course in the front office. And like, there's some stats I wrote down in my notebook. 42% of employees in the front office are women, 243 women in front offices of teams across the league. It is getting better. There were actually people on the field that were women. 3 NFL referees last year were ladies. It's a big deal.
It's a big deal. And I got to ask, I mean, I know, Sandra's your girl and everything since you interviewed her, but who do you got?
I mean, okay, so if you look at the records of these teams, it's not really even close. And not because I'm a fan of Sandra, but because, like...
Super objective, Steve.
Okay, Carolina's been getting their booty beat. Out recent weeks, like, it's not been good. So we'll see, but... My money's on the Raiders.
Steve Patterson, thanks so much, man.
Thanks, man.
And still ahead, we've got a whale of a tale from NBC's Josh Letterman while more and more orcas are attacking boats. His trip to one of the so-called hot zones to figure out what's going on. Hey, welcome back. Let's take a quick look around the world. Russian President Vladimir Putin is warning NATO not to let Ukraine strike deeper into Russian territory using Western-provided missiles, calling it an act of war. Now, this comes as U.S. and NATO leaders are considering lifting restrictions on long-range weapons, which could escalate that war. Meanwhile, the European Union has pledged $39 billion in loans to Ukraine using interest from frozen Russian assets. This loan would help Ukraine rebuild critical energy infrastructure as winter approaches. And Canadian and Italian officials have celebrated the return of the real roaring lion portrait of Winston Churchill that was stolen from Ottawa back in 2021. That's the one right there. The portrait was recovered in Italy following a 2-year investigation after art historians realized someone had taken that one and replaced it with a fake. And a 15-foot python. This is the stuff of nightmares. It snuck into a 64-year-old Bangkok woman's home, bit her thigh, then coiled around her. Trapped, she had to fight back for nearly 2 hours until her neighbor finally heard her screaming for help. Rescuers used a crowbar to free her, a crowbar. And despite a few bites, she walked away okay. I would have given up in the first minute. And in tonight's edition of Stay Wild, we are taking a closer look at one story that we have talked about a whole lot on our show. It is the weird killer whale attacks on boats in the Strait of Gibraltar. Some of them even causing those vessels to sink. NBC's Josh Letterman traveled to the strait to find out more on why killer whales are on the attack.
He's going for it.
It's a terrifying mystery on the high seas. Why are orcas, better known as killer whales, attacking boats by the hundreds, slamming into sailboats, ramming their rudders, even sinking at least half a dozen vessels since 2020? Baffling marine biologists who say orcas and humans have always gotten along. But now new research may explain what's happening. Scientists in Spain say older orcas are training the young how to hunt Atlantic bluefin tuna, fast-swimming fish that can go up to 13 feet long.
73.
Once endangered, the population of these tuna have recently recovered and become a critical part of these orcas' diet.
The orcas, they need to ram, they need to hit, they need to bite to isolate this large tuna. How do they reinforce this technique practicing?
But not all scientists agree. I traveled to the orca attack hot zone, the Strait of Gibraltar, to find out why run-ins with the ocean's top predator are on the rise. Yannick Andre runs We Whale, which tracks orcas at sea and works to keep them safe.
Is it accurate to call these attacks? Actually, not at all, because it's an attack implies something aggressive towards humans.
Some scientists believe it's like the kind of fads teenagers go through, a learned behavior that, for whatever reason, becomes popular for a while and then fizzles out. At Spain's southern tip, we board a 30-foot boat and set sail. Despite their nickname, killer whales, orcas are actually massive dolphins, up to 27 feet long and weighing as much as 6 tons, and extremely intelligent, with their own language of clicks and whistles. The subspecies striking boats is called the Iberian orca, and it's considered critically endangered. Just 35 still believed to be alive.
Is there a real risk the Iberian orca could become extinct? Definitely. I think we're just on the path to it, unfortunately.
Iberian orcas spend the colder months near northern Spain, but when the weather gets warmer, they follow their prey, the tuna, to the Strait of Gibraltar, one of the world's busiest shipping lanes.
This is the Strait of Gibraltar. Spain is right here. Gibraltar's behind me. Africa is off in the distance this way. And this is ground zero for where orcas have been sinking boats.
There have been no deaths, but a lot of scares. Since 2020, roughly 700 orca interactions with boats.
Yeah. Oh my God.
It was in these waters in May that orcas rammed this 65-foot British yacht for an hour, breaking the rudder and flooding the engine room, prompting a mayday call and an emergency rescue. In the coastal town of Barbate, Spain, everybody has a story. Manuel Marianda was followed by a pod of orcas during his nightly fishing trip. He says, of course, they can sink you. Once the water enters, there's nothing you can do.
As a fisherman, do you consider these orcas to be your enemy?
No, he says. We're the ones in their habitat. Sailors have tried all kinds of ways to deter orcas when they show up, like making noise, throwing sand in the water, or turning off the engine and playing dead.
Do you think we'll ever know for sure why these orca interactions are happening? No, because we're not orcas. So you can do a lot of science and studies and whatever, but in the end, it's such an unknown world for us, what's happening below the water. Scientists tell me that for better or for worse, these orca run-ins are not going to stop anytime soon. After all, this is their habitat. Humans and wildlife are simply going to have to find some safe way to share these waters.
Josh Letterman out there off the Strait of Gibraltar, living to tell a whale of a tale. Thanks, Josh. Now, before we go, it is time for the future of everything. The Polaris Dawn crew still taking it all in after experiencing that incredible mission. Tonight, we are taking a closer look at their out-of-this-world trip. And in tonight's Future of Everything, we are taking a look at the historic Polaris Dawn crew. But first, Microsoft is making some headlines as it looks to reopen the 3 Mile Island nuclear plant. Now, the owner of the plant striking a deal with the tech company to bring it online in 2028 pending approval. Microsoft would then use 100% of the power created to support its artificial intelligence. The site of the worst nuclear accident in the U.S. happened there, 3 Mile Island, and it was closed in 2019, and it would be the first decommissioned plant to come back into service. Also, a new milestone in space travel. Earlier this week, the nation cheered the successful voyage of the Polaris Dawn, the all-civilian first team of astronauts to complete a spacewalk. And today's show's Hoda Kotb gives us a closer look at their incredible space odyssey.
That's awesome.
In the 5 days between launch and splashdown, the 4 Polaris crew members made their mark on history, reaching an orbit 870 miles above Earth. SpaceX astronaut Sarah Gillis and Anna Menon flew further in space than any women in history. The Dragon capsule flying higher than anyone since the last Apollo flights to the moon more than 50 years ago.
These take us closer to fulfilling SpaceX's dream of making life multiplanetary.
With Scott Poteet serving as the mission pilot, the crew also conducting some 40 research experiments and testing new spacesuits in the first ever all-civilian spacewalk, a high-risk operation that required the crew to open the entire capsule, exposing all 4 of the members to the vacuum of space. Billionaire entrepreneur Jared Isaacman and SpaceX engineer Sarah Gillis venturing outside the capsule.
Do you have visual?
Affirm, we have visual on the nose cone.
The crew says the mission brought back valuable information about the challenges of future manned missions to the moon or even SpaceX hopes to Mars. But they also found time to bring joy to those of us on Earth, with Gillis becoming the first person to play the violin in space, sharing the music of Star Wars with the cosmos. The team also hosting a special long-distance call with young cancer patients at St. Jude Children's Research Center.
Do people live in space, and do you want to live in space?
There have been people living in space on the International Space Station for
over 20 years now.
SpaceX medical officer Anna Menon reading to the kids from her book, Kisses from Space.
Higher and higher we rose to the sky.
It is the story of a mama dragon as she journeys to space and shares that journey with her baby dragons back here on Earth.
This morning, this mama dragon and the others are home safe, sharing the experience with loved ones after an historic space adventure.
Mama Dragon, how about that? Hoda, thank you. And finally tonight, let's end your week with 60 seconds of joy. When you think of a suitcase, you usually think of packing up for a trip. But for the past 2 weeks, one middle school in Minnesota is packing a suitcase with a little more power. Aaron Min from KTTC has that story.
1, 2, 3.
This solar suitcase is traveling to a school in East Africa, a $3,500 donation by Stewartville Middle School. When attached to a solar panel, the standalone power system can bring electricity to anywhere in need. The Stewartville School District purchased one of these suitcases, which will then be donated to a middle school in Uganda or Kenya.
Some kids over there have to walk to a gas station to use light. And when the lights turn off around midnight or 1 a.m., they either have the choice to sleep there where it's safer or to walk home where it's not so safe.
We have a lot of things most people don't have in the world, and you got to feel that gratitude about that. And you also have to feel happy that you're helping them out.
An effort to shine a light for fellow middle schoolers. The students take home a joy of being part of something bigger.
Gratitude and the desire to give back, incredible. That does it for us tonight. I'm Gadi Schwartz. Have a great weekend. We'll see you on Monday. But until then, stay tuned now.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.